Hello, everyone. This is a sort of a different look here. We're in Lynn's living room. There's voting going on downstairs tomorrow for our local governments, and so that same room that you normally see us in is actually also used for voting in our district here. So praise God! What a great opportunity. So we're here tonight. It may look a little granular to you, but as Mike likes to say, just all you're really here for is to listen. So, all right. So where we're at tonight is we're in Genesis, the 7th chapter. But as it is our custom, we like to do a review, just so that we make sure where we're at. Now, we actually did 2 chapters last week. We did chapter 5 and chapter 6. Terry, that's the reason why we're going over this.
Terry,
right?
you can pull that little table over.
Oh, that's okay.
You know, and the idea here is to be able to give us the opportunity to review and help us to remember. So, when we did in chapter 5 was we just did a reading of the lineage from Adam to Noah. We talked about the genealogy that went from Adam down to eventually Noah. Any names jump out at you? Because remember, we talked a lot about age.
Yeah,
Methuselah, right? 969 years, the oldest man ever recorded. And so that's pretty exciting. And we also noticed that for the most part, the years shrunk. They're still extremely long, but they eventually began to shrink. All right. What was that?
They're getting younger.
They're dying younger. But they're still dying in their 900s.
Yeah.
What about the name Enoch? Does that name mean anything to you?
Father of Methuselah. He was with God.
Did he ever die?
God took him.
Enoch was taken by God.
Yeah.
If you want to go ahead and look at this is chapter 5, verse 24. Enoch walked with God, and he was no more, because God took him away. Amazing.
Praise God.
Yeah. Sounds like a great way to end.
It is a great way.
I'd love to do that myself, but we also said that there was somebody else in the Bible who never saw death, who was just taken up into God.
Oh yeah.
And
Elijah.
Elijah, very good. All right, Elijah went up to God in a chariot of fire. By the way, that's my favorite movie, Chariots of Fire. All right, if you want to know where that comes from, that's where it comes from. It's the story of Elijah going up into heaven, the chariots of fire. So there's Enoch and Elijah, and I tied it into Revelation. There's 2 witnesses that come back to speak to the world about the end of the world. And some theologians believe that there are 2 men who never died, Elijah and Enoch. All right, it's 2 very powerful men of God. So that took us through, as we went through, we went all the way down to verse 32, and then it tells us about after Noah was 500 years old, he became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. This really boggles my mind. What did he do for 500 years? Until he had his children. But that's what the Bible tells us. Then we rolled into chapter 6. And this begins talking about these really strange things. You talked about how the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful. And then how God's Spirit grieves because man had become so evil. We talked about the Nephilim who were on the earth in those days. And also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them, they were the heroes of old, men of renown. The Lord saw how great man's wickedness on the earth had become. This is verse 5. And that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil all the time. The Lord was grieved in that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. Can you imagine that? Do we ever think about God being in pain?
Only when he was crucified.
Yeah, when he became on earth, right? Because we know that in heaven, all right, there's not going to be any pain. There's not going to be a tear or anything. Because, we will be in new bodies and be with the Lord. So in verse 7, the Lord said, I will wipe mankind, who I have created, from the face of the earth, men and animals, and creatures that move along the ground, and the birds of the air, for I am grieved that I had made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. In verse 9 it says, this is the account of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked with God. Whoa! That's just like Enoch. He walked with God. Noah had the 3 sons, and he repeats himself and says who the 3 sons are. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And it's going to be important to remember these names. Now the earth was corrupt. This is verse 11. In God's sight it was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become. So he's repeating this, driving this point home, that this death sentence he's about to give to the whole world, why it is. So then he begins giving instructions to Noah. This is verse 13. So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. Verse 14. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you're to build it. The ark is to be 450 feet long, 70 feet high, and 45 feet high. 75 feet wide and 45 feet high. Make a roof for it and finish the ark to within 18 inches of the top. Put a door on the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I am going to bring flood waters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens. Every creature that has breath of life in it, everything on the earth will perish. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your wives, and your wife and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. Note that. That's very important to remember, because that is not what's going to happen. It's true, that does happen, but a lot more is going to happen. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food, that's important to remember, that is to be eaten, stored away as food for you and for them. Verse 22, Noah did everything just as God had commanded him. Alright? This is going to take a long time.
Yeah.
A lot of preparation.
A lot of work building this thing. Alright? It's not like how we can build ships today. Alright? He's got to, obviously fell all the wood, prep all the wood, build this ship, find the pitch. Just think about how wood was fashioned in those days. How'd you put wood together? How'd you make it work? Now, I'm not a carpenter, but I built the patio outside of my house. Mike's been there, and compared to what Noah has done, that's nothing. What I did actually is maybe, a quarter of the railing he has.
Yeah.
All right, and I had power tools, and I had Vinny Oliveira there to help me sink the 4x4s into the concrete to be able to give it stability. That was a lot of work. I'm still doing it. I'm still working on it. But it's no great thing. I can only imagine what this is. Because remember, they still had to survive. They just couldn't go down to, what's the new store down the street here, Papa G's, and get some chicken. They had to do a lot of work. They had to farm and hunt and things along those lines to survive. So this is a major undertaking. What do you think his neighbors are going to say to him?
But it was crazy.
Very much so. Crazy, and remember, they're becoming very evil, very selfish, and even cruel, possibly. So there's an awful lot that's going into this as Noah is obeying God. Okay? All right, so are we ready to get into chapter 7?
We're ready.
All right, here we go. So now we're in chapter 7. This is the first verse. The Lord then said to Noah, Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Watch this. Take with you 7 of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 2 of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made. And Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds, of all creatures that move along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days the floodwaters came on the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, on that day all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and rain fell on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. On that very day Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, together with his wife and the wives of his 3 sons, entered the ark. They had with them every wild animal according to its kind, all livestock according to their kinds, every creature that moves along the ground according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, and everything with wings. Pairs of all creatures that had been breath of life in it then came to Noah and entered the ark. The animals going in were male and female of every living thing, as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord shut him in. For 40 days the flood kept coming on the earth. As the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 20 feet. Every living thing that moved on the earth perished. Birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. Men and animals, and the creatures that move along the ground, and the birds of the air were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. Yes. So let's pause and think about this just for a few minutes. It's going back to verse 1 and start to think about this and how this all works. Alright, so we're in chapter 7, begin looking back in verse 1. Then the Lord said to Noah, "Go into the ark, and you your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation." We talked about the word righteous before. What does that mean?
Living right, I guess.
Yeah.
With who?
God.
With God. Right standing with God. Right standing with God. Noah stood in good standing with God. He was obedient. This is the idea of here of following God's ways, not his own ways. And really, that's what gets us into trouble. Is this that we wanted our ways, the Burger King thing. You can have it your way, which is really also a big part of how we, Americans specifically live their lives. I remember after my father came to Christ, I remember we would do Bible studies and we would talk. And my dad, was he died 8 years ago now, so 6 years ago now, and was 73. So he'd been pushing 80 now. But he grew up with the Rat Pack, all right, Frank Sinatra and all those guys, okay. And one of his favorite songs by Sinatra, which a lot of people's favorite song is "My Way," right? I did it my way, and my father challenged me on that. He says, "Mark, I love that song. You tell me I got it wrong?" I say, "Yeah, Frank's got it wrong. It's not about our way. I mean, we want to do it our way. Dad, your life shows it. You've tried to do it your way your whole life, as I. All right, and it's gotten you in lots of trouble." My father lost a marriage, he lost a family, lost a business, lost a home, lost 2 families. And fortunately for him, he was able to, despite not taking very good care of himself, was able to keep his life. But, again, he did it his way. I mean, there are people who get away with it, but for the most part, no.
A lot of people have taught that, though.
I think
The
our
world
culture teaches
teaches
it.
it.
I think you agree, Mike. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Our culture teaches it. You got to be your own man.
Right.
And that's one reason why that song is so popular.
And that's why it's so important that we now demonstrate to the world that it's not our way.
Right. So,
It's
right. So Noah's singing, "I did it God's way. I'm going to do it your way, and let that be His praise, and let that be His worship." And again, by the way, I can't help it. We've joked about this too, but I can't help but go back to Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby did a bit on Noah's Ark, and where Cosby's playing Noah, and he hears God's voice, and it's a very funny bit. And I'm sure you can find it online, but there's Noah being played by Cosby, and God says, "Noah, what?" Isn't he saying it right there? There's a good chance in this case there actually is an audible voice going back. Because that's another thing too about this. This says, then the Lord said to Noah, versus Noah experienced God in a dream, which happens a lot in the Bible. Adam's the same way. He's walking with God in the cool of the day. So here's a situation where Cosby's bit goes on, and God tells Noah, "I want you to build me an ark." Noah says, "Right. What's an ark?" And it has to go through the whole thing. Of course, there's lots of fun parts of it. It said, and then where the Lord says, "I'm going to let it rain for 1,000 days." We know that's not what happens. So Noah says to him, "How about if you let it rain for 40 days and 40 nights and wait for the sewers to back up?" But the end part of it goes like this. Noah begins to argue with God. Right? Specifically gets to the point where, because God keeps asking him to do things. And he's already built the ark. He's got the animals in it. And Noah says, "I did this. And I don't know if you've been down to the bottom of the ark, but there's a mess down there, and I'm not cleaning it up." And then God says, Noah says, "What? How long can you tread water?" Needless to say, Cosby's had a lot of fun with it. Cosby's a godly man. But it's really funny. But Noah's not like that. He's not arguing with God. And again, I don't really necessarily have an issue with arguing with God, as long as you know you're wrong. But Noah, that's what this means, was that he is standing in rightness with God, which should be a desire for us. In verse 2, God tells him, take with you 7 of every kind of clean animal, and a male and its mate. That's not what I remember. In Sunday school, it's always 2 of every kind. So what is this all about?
They took a lot of, I guess the 7 were the unclean ones.
Okay, that's right. So what's with the clean ones?
I guess that's the ones that he knows going to follow him.
Oh, you're on the right track. Clean versus unclean. What does that mean?
Ones that live off the ground and ones that live in the air.
Well, you're on the right track again, because remember, there's 3 kinds of animals, right? The ones that come out of the sea, the ones that are on the ground, the ones in the air. And you know a little bit about me, too, and about my diet, right?
Right.
I'm not going to have a pulled pork sandwich.
Yeah.
All right, he's eating clean animals.
So they have to, all right, so they have the unclean animals to survive on the ark.
The clean animals are going to survive as well. He's just not going to eat them all.
And the bad animals are the ones that are going to be eaten. The clean animals will be eating the bad animals.
No, the clean animals are going to be eaten by the humans. All right, so this is kosher. The idea of being kosher. This is the first time we hear about being kosher. All right, if you remember, all right, it's not going to. The law doesn't come into Leviticus. All right, later on is when Moses brings out the law. All right, and starts teaching them how they have to remain clean. Remember, Orthodox Jewish people, all right, do not eat certain animals or certain things that come out of the sea or certain things that fly. The law goes like this: if it comes out of the sea, it has to have scales and fins. All right, so no lobster, no scallops, things like that. If it comes off the land, it has to have a split hoof. I'm doing this, split hoof, and chew its cud, like a cow does, or a deer. All right, comes out of the ear. It can't be a bird of prey. That's what what we mean by clean animals. At least in Leviticus, what we know exactly about what's going on here in Genesis, we don't know. We're going to guess that that's the case. Remember, we studied this in Acts. Remember when Peter had his dream on Cornelius' roof, and this sheet came down with all these foods, clean and unclean. God told Peter in the dream, take and eat. And Peter said, I can't eat anything that's unclean. And God said, don't say something is unclean that I say is clean. Of course, what it really meant was, Peter, you can now go to the Gentiles and begin to speak to them. All right. So this is neat. This is the reason why you never hear about the 7 animals. Okay? Because it's kind of complicated. And it's really dinner. All right, so we're still in that same verse. And its mate. And 2 of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate. He only needs 2 because he's not eating them. And also 7 of every kind of bird. But we know more about the birds that are going to be happening later on. You guys remember what happens later on with the birds?
No, he lets one bird go.
He lets a couple of them go. He lets a couple of them go in order to be able to find land. So just keep that in mind. Male and female to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and for 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made. And Noah did all the Lord commanded him. Now wait a minute, let's pause. Let's be very clear about this. Because this is going to happen throughout the Bible, by the way. This is the first and only time at that time where God has wiped out all of creation. At the end of all this, he will talk about it again. But there are many other times he wipes out whole peoples. We read about it in Joshua. Okay? What right does God have to do this?
Belongs to him.
All belongs to him. He's the creator. He even says it over and over again here, that he's going to wipe out all creation that he created. As the creator, he has that right. Verse 5. And Noah did all the Lord commanded him. Verse 6. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth. We talked about age. People don't age the same way back then as they do now. There are some scientists who think that, like you've seen Cro-Magnon man with the forehead that's really forward like that too. Well, they've done other studies. They found people who have lived a long time, over 100 years, begin to build up a lot of calcifications on their forehead, and the forehead actually stinks out a little bit. So there's a possibility that those ancient bones that they found were really just humans that lived a very long time. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds, of all creatures that were moving on the ground, male and female, came to Noah. So he's not out there trapping all these animals.
No.
No, they're coming to him. And entered the ark as God had commanded Noah. And then after 7 days, the flood waters came on the earth. Think about how horrible this is. Think about how horrible this is for Noah and his family. I mean, this is amazing. First of all, the animals coming has just got to be stunning. And then to see the rain come. Verse 13. On the very day Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, together with his wife and the wives of his 3 sons, entered the ark. They had with them every wild animal according to its kind, which means they probably didn't have every single kind of wolf. They had a kind of wolf. And then later, those wolves became different types of wolves. And actually, we domesticated certain wolves, and we called them dogs. And then we went ahead and we bred dogs differently and stuff like that. Okay. So now we're down to, okay, let's just go on right on down to verse 15. Pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life in them came to Noah and entered the ark. The animals going in were male and female of every living thing, as God had commanded Noah. And then the Lord shut him in. If he's shutting them in, who is being shut out?
Humanity.
All humanity. Why do you think God shut the door and didn't have Noah and his sons shut it?
Probably too big.
I can imagine. I think it's a pretty big door.
To have those big animals going through a doorway.
So they have a couple of elephants that could probably help pull the door shut.
And the giraffes.
Yeah, there's lots of strong animals to help them with it.
So it must have been a real heavy door.
But I don't think that's the reason.
He didn't want no water to get in. He didn't want.
Yeah, but the men could shut the door. If the men could shut the door, why did God shut it? Why is it not Noah and his sons?
So they would be protected with God.
He sealed them.
They're protected by God, but something else is happening. Once that door is shut, what does that mean?
No one can go in.
No one can go in. What will happen to them?
They're going to die.
They'll die. They'll drown.
Yeah, they'd all die.
It's a death sentence. Noah is not the one required to pass the death sentence. God does it.
Yeah.
You know how it is. You've probably experienced it in your lives as well. There are certain people who will make other people do the dirty work. Both Mike and I are veterans, and I was an officer, but I was enlisted for 13 years before I became an officer. So I worked my way up to the ranks, and I know that as I got more senior, I always wanted to be the first one. I always wanted to be able to demonstrate to my troopers that there's nothing I was going to require them to do that I had not already done or was willing to do myself. It was just, first of all, I love living crazy anyways, but it's important that I be able to show that I'm willing to take on that risk. That's what God is doing here. He's not requiring Noah to do the dirty work. This is the most horrible thing in all of mankind. All these humans are going to die. A horrible death. Drowning is not fun. It's not a quick death. It's a slow death. And just see all these other people dying. And so it's a very, very powerful statement. Then when you see this, and I'm really glad to see that it's in here. For 40 days the flood kept coming on the earth, and the waters increased. They lifted the ark high above the earth. Verse 18. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 20 feet. Okay, so now we're talking the very highest levels. Now, I don't think Mount Everest was as high then as it is now. I really do believe that the slipping of tectonic plates do push up mountains. A lot of scientists believe the same thing. That's the reason why they'll tell you why the Grand Canyon is there. That the Grand Canyon at one time was actually California, was actually where the Pacific Ocean ended. And there's just over time these different volcanic activities underneath the ground pushes it up. So I think that the mountains weren't as high, but why 20 feet above the highest point?
Nothing's going to survive.
No one's going to survive it. It's not like you're going to be
You can't put your feet down and touch
remember,
bottom.
we've already heard about the Nephilim, right? And we think they were really tall guys. They couldn't be standing on top of a ladder there, on the top of a mountain, so that he can survive. 20 feet, and they were going to die. All right. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 20 feet. We're in verse 21. Every living thing that moved on the earth perished. Birds, livestock, wild animals, and all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had breath of life in its nostrils died. So there it is. By the way, we keep reading about the breath of life. That first came into existence when God breathed life into Adam. So now that same thing God is now taking. And remember too, when Adam was created, it was never supposed to be death. The breath of life from eating from the tree of life was supposed to be giving us eternal life. But because of our sin, as it is here, we actually, when we embrace sin, we choose death. And then we only know life again through the bread of life. That's Jesus Christ himself. And so this begins to point to that. The ark is Christ. He's the one now saving us from the same idea. Verse 23. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. Men and animals, and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds of the air were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. All right, so this is how the whole world was destroyed. One of the things I think that a lot of us would like to know is, did God try to do anything to try to reverse this? One of the beauties of having the New Testament is we get to learn a lot more about the Old Testament. You don't need to turn there, but I'm going to 2 Peter. I think I'm going to 2 Peter 2:5. 2 Peter 2:5 it is. Now, if you want to go there, you can. If you remember how it goes, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the Acts, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, and then we get into Peter. So I guess you don't want to turn there. I don't blame you. All right. This is 2 Peter. So this is the second epistle or letter of Peter that he's writing. And I'm going to go ahead and begin reading. I'm going to read beginning in verse 1. So 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 1. But there were also false prophets among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you. They will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the sovereign Lord who bought them, bringing swift destruction on themselves. Sound familiar? All right. Many will follow their shameful ways. These are the bad teachers of the time. And will bring the way of truth into disrepute. In their greed, these teachers will exploit you with stories they have made up. Their condemnation has long been hanging over them, and their destruction has not been sleeping. For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them into a gloomy dungeons to be held for judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world when he brought the flood on its ungodly people, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness. Noah didn't keep his righteousness to himself. He appealed to the people of the time, so much so that Peter, who's only echoing what the Jews have been speaking of for all these thousands of years, he says it. Noah, a preacher of righteousness, and 7 others. If he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and goes on to explain this, where God appeals to us to come back to him, to come back to his righteous ways. He did that in Noah's time, begging them, come to save them. I think you're right. I think God's always calling us. Always calling us.
Always.
We just got to be bold enough to answer him and then obey him, to be in right standing with God.
I heard his voice. I always believed in God since I was like 13.
Right.
That's when I first accepted him. And I always believed in him. But that night that I called to him and I was crying and crying and crying, and I heard his voice, there's no doubt in my mind now.
Yep. Amen.
There's no doubt in my mind. He's there. He's there. And if you cry and you really believe and you're really begging, I was begging. I wanted to hear his voice. I needed to hear his voice.
Right, right.
And he wants us to beg him.
He wants us. He wants us to be in fellowship with him.
Yeah.
He also wants us to, believe it or not, be preachers of righteousness.
Yeah.
This is just telling people, like, it's like, one of the things that, when Mike and I are out walking, one of the things is just to try to engage people, right? Just say hello.
Yeah. Say hi to somebody.
Because, again, for Mike and I, when we're walking around with the Jesus shirts on and cleaning the streets, it's like, this is the only gospel these people are going to get today.
Yeah.
Or this week, or maybe even this month. Just to have somebody look at them and smile, acknowledge their existence. But this is also being a preacher of righteousness. The name is righteous. So we just want to love on them as well. But I don't want you to give you the impression that God did not appeal to mankind. He did. And that's the reason why eventually No one would listen.
Yeah,
And-
the shit was a really good idea because they see the shit and they go, their first thought is, the free shit.
Well, they know. They
Get
think
free
this.
shit.
I
They're
like
not
your
thinking
shirt.
about Jesus.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a free shit. But when they got that shit on,
Yeah,
they're advertising Jesus.
yeah.
And then
Well,
other
we're-
people say, hey, so-and-so's got a Jesus shirt on.
Yeah.
Oh,
See,
I
because they
that
like the
shit.
Jesus on it
He's
because it's just a
crazy enough,
T-shirt.
Yeah.
It's just a T-shirt. There's lots of
But
kids
it's got
walking
his
around
name,
wearing
it's
it.
got a powerful name.
That's got a powerful name on it.
Yeah.
You know, and that name means righteousness to us. This is through Christ's blood we have right standing with God. Only because of that. And everybody needs to know that. Everybody needs to know. But they need to know it in a loving way. So praise God.
His name saves.
His name saves.
When he, that's one thing is about the shirts is you don't have to say words. Just people come up to you.
Yeah.
It's been happening every day now. Everywhere I'm going,
Yep.
I got this new hat on, which my fedora hat there. Wherever
Yeah. I said the fedora.
I got another one at AC Moore today. She said, "I like that hat."
Yeah, yeah.
But now I'm thinking, where'd you get? I said, I got it at Walmart. Now I got to look up at Walmart. See, but these aren't $1.50 or
Right.
$2. They're more money. But
All
anyway,
right.
the point is that, and that kid on the bike, he liked the hat. And you take a hat, you put Jesus on it 3 times. Now this is something, even as a novelty, somebody might wear, but you don't know how many people they're going to walk through.
Yeah.
And bring his name that might look at the hat
Yeah.
and come to the Lord because of it.
Yeah.
Using this person that's just wearing it for their own glory.
Right.
You don't know.
Yeah.
And you know.
We 2 other things. One of the things is no. We'll talk about dinner a little bit later on.
Okay.
2 other things though. Mike and I discovered. So when Mike comes to my house on Sunday, we talk about where we need to go. We can't do all of Corky Row. So Mike will come and say, Mark, it's a real mess over here. Or I'll say, I saw. And the most common place for us is this one spot, 5th and Morgan, and always a real disaster. And I had gone to church earlier in the day, and I said to Mike, we don't need to clean that today. He goes, why? I said, it's clean. We're thinking
Yeah.
they started taking responsibility for the area. Oh, praise God. Again, any kind of influence. But I also think this name,
It's opening people's eyes.
it also, because people know Jesus. They know who he is. Even the people who use his name in vain, they know. And I think what happens is that it touches the heart. So, Lord willing, that's what's happening. Okay, I'm going to leave you with this. And the only reason why I'm going to bring this up is because, well, it's in the news. All right. Our Secretary of State is John Kerry, the former Senator of Massachusetts. Just 2 days ago, he gave a speech where he said it's our responsibility to help the Muslim world with climate control. You've heard a lot about global warming. With climate control, all right, because the Bible tells us to do that.
Bible.
And then I'm hearing people on the radio, most of the critics, where's he getting that from?
Yeah, where is right.
We've just studied it. It's in Genesis. Man is responsible for caring for the earth. That's where he's getting it from. Now, I don't believe in global climate change the way they're talking about it. I believe it happens naturally. I don't think it's man-made or man-caused. All right, but I just found that real interesting that he said that, and I know where he's getting it from. But since when did those guys think that the Bible is authoritative? I just don't think that's happening.
Just to have them come out and say it.
Yeah, so I was happy for that.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Any questions before we sign off? No? It's pretty interesting. It's going to get more interesting. It's also going to get kind of strange, too. So we got to stick with this because we love Noah. Noah is a righteous man. He's done some really amazing things. He is, just like all the rest of us, going to make some mistakes. Do some things he shouldn't do. All right? But God still loves him. All right? God bless you guys. We'll see you later.